When people see strange beliefs like this, they're like, "Oh, that historically speaking, oh, it's Christian Science." But I'm like, "It's not just Christian Science. Like, this is so much more. This is a movement. It's a philosophy. It's interwoven into the very fabric of American thought. Like, it's something that we don't really have a name for, but everybody has experienced, whether you're a Christian or an American or a European, because it is throughout the world. You have experienced it, whether you have a name for it or not."
Hello, and welcome to the Will Spencer Podcast. This is a weekly interview show where I sit down and talk with authors, thought leaders, and influencers who help us understand our changing world. New episodes drop every Friday. My guest this week is Melissa Dougherty. Melissa is a Christian apologist best known for her YouTube channel with almost 400,000 subscribers. Her videos, which primarily cover New Age and New Thought, have been viewed over 18 million times. Melissa is highly regarded and connected in the apologetics community. She has had numerous influential guests on her YouTube channel and is a frequent guest on YouTube videos and podcasts of popular thinkers as well. Melissa has a bachelor's degree in religious studies from Southern Evangelical Seminary, where she's also pursuing her master's degree in religious studies. Melissa is married with 2 daughters and lives in New Mexico. Melissa Dougherty, welcome to the Will Spencer Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I have your book here, Happy Lies, How a Movement You've Probably Never Heard of Shaped Our Self-Obsessed World. I really enjoyed reading this book, and I've been looking forward to talking with you about it because, as my listeners know, I spent 20 years in the New Age, which, of course, New Age and New Thought are parallel worlds to each other with some overlap. So, of course, I've encountered a lot of these ideas, but in a different context. So getting to dive into them was very educational, edifying, especially now coming from a Christian perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was one of the things that confused me for a while is, if you read the book, I thought I was in the New Age, and I kind of was.
Hmm.
I always say I'm an ex-New Thoughter with a little bit of ex-New Age sprinkled in, but I've never met an ex-New Ager or a New Ager who was not also a New Thoughter.
Yeah. Yeah, the two go hand in hand. I was aware of a lot of those things like manifesting and, that your thoughts create your reality, kind of those ideas.
Yeah.
I was never really sure how seriously I took them. I had experiences that seemed to confirm them, but I
Yeah.
was always of the perspective like, I don't know myself well enough to really visualize what I want.
Yeah, the trust issues, right?
Yeah.
Universe, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I kind of think that even some of that can seep over into the Christian world where we're
Mhm.
afraid. Yeah, we're God, what should I do? What should I wear? What about this? What about that? And it's like a fear. We're so afraid to make a mistake. So that's interesting that there's a parallel there. But yeah, for me, no, I knew what I wanted. You would have been a terrible new thoughter.
Oh, it would have been awful. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? But
Yeah.
it's hard to escape like Napoleon. I almost said Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
It's hard to escape The Secret. It's hard to
Hmm.
escape all of those ideas anytime, and even inside Christianity as well.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's a weird, it's an interesting dance because I think that what puts New Thought in a different bracket, because I know that there's other spiritualities out there that have, this idea that your thoughts have power, maybe, right? Like they don't call it Christ consciousness, they might call it God consciousness or whatever it is. And some of it's more new agey, but what really sets New Thought apart is that it has the tone of Christianity. Like it brings
Hmm.
Jesus into it. It claims to be Christian. That's really where it gets really messy. And that's where we have a dog in the fight because you have this other counterfeit version of Christianity that most Christians have never even heard of, yet a lot are falling for it because it's in the name of Jesus. And nobody's been able to actually pin it down.
Mhm.
Some people might think, oh, it looks kind of progressive. It looks kind of, is that new age? Or actually, that looks pretty biblical. And so it just kind of becomes this ball of mess, this twine, really. That people are trying to unravel.
That is so interesting because from my experiences with New Thought, I never interpreted it as a Christian thing. It was
Mm,
always just kind of encapsulated within this New Age, your
mhm,
mind creates reality kind of idea. We are all one, we are God kind of thing. I never
mhm,
saw it as Christian, but having read your book and then people telling me about Norman Vincent Peale, who I'd never
mhm.
read, like, oh, I can understand how this has a history in the Christian faith.
Yeah, and some of it's very secular too. So if you go
Hmm.
back into the history, like I love talking about the history of it, and there's so much to learn. Like I'll read
Yeah.
a dry, boring New Thought history book, which exists, but nobody knows about, and I'll read it, and it just falls out of your brain, right? It's like your brain's an SD card, and so you have to kinda go back and reread it, and I just love learning about the history, but, religious science. Religious science is a denomination of New Thought. And again,
Oh,
most people have never even heard of that. The largest one is probably Unity. Most cities have a Unity center in their area. You have some crossover with the transcendental movement. So you have Unitarian Universalists who kind of cross over into some of the beliefs, even though they're a little separate. Like it's kind of messy, but it can get very secular.
mhm,
And religious science is probably, I would say, the most secular, where you'll have people who kind of cling more to the beliefs, but they won't necessarily talk a whole lot about Jesus. They'll
okay.
talk about the power within you. They'll talk about, Christ consciousness. Maybe they'll talk about mind over matter, vibrations, frequencies, love, love. It's all about love. They
Mhm,
can become very progressive, but you're right. Like there can be an element of it that is more secular, where you're not dragging Jesus into it, but the origin of it. Definitely has Christian undertones. The New Thought movement, people in New Thought, especially Unity. Unity probably has the most Christian ease, the most Christian ease, and then Christian Science. Most people have heard of Christian Science. That's a cult of New Thought.
mhm,
So, working back from there, I actually didn't deal with Christian Science a lot in my book for that reason, because the founder, Mary Baker Eddy, she took a lot of the beliefs of New Thought and just made it cultish. She had a lot of falling out with the original founders.
yeah.
She was domineering. She was mean. And basically took on that kind of like that narcissistic role where she had a lot of character and people believed her. And of course, she wrote her, what was it? Can't remember the name of it, but her Science of
Maybe.
Health, I think it's what it's called. Yeah. Which is a really new thought, but the new thought movement didn't it was what they were trying to do was get away from any sort of dogma. They were trying to get away from the rules, if you will. And so here comes this Mary Baker Eddy coming in like a wrecking ball, and she's like making rules and making it domineering and doing the opposite. And so they kind of split. And so
Oh, interesting.
yeah, so most people would understand Christian Science. And so when people see strange beliefs like this. They're like, "Oh, that historically speaking, oh, it's Christian Science," but I'm like, it's not just Christian Science. Like this is so much more. This is a movement. It's a philosophy. It's interwoven into the very fabric of American thought. Like it's something that we don't really have a name for, but everybody has experienced, whether you're a Christian or an American or a European, because it is throughout the world. You have experienced it, whether you have a name for it or not.
I think you really hit on it right there. People don't have a name for it, and I think people have a name for New Age as imprecise and perhaps outdated as it is. It's a bucket that people can kind of throw
Yeah.
everything into. New Thought is like, what's that? Like they don't know how to even apply the label properly to what they're seeing.
Oh, yeah, it's been hiding behind the leg of New Age. That's kinda
Yeah.
the way I put it. It's like, "Oh, they can't see me, and, I'm just gonna hide behind you, okay, New Age? You're gonna take the blame for everything." And, the reason why this was, like, really personal for me is, I
Yeah.
mean, here I am, I'm a Christian, I became a Christian at 16, and I grew up with New Thought beliefs, but I didn't know that, and, so I'm it seemed so mystical and esoteric and secret and hidden to me. I'm like, "Oh my word, look at this the secret hidden gospels, the lost gospels. Look at all this missing knowledge." It was so interesting to me, and I think that mindset, by the way, is why a lot of people get into, like, conspiracies.
Hmm.
We it's not sexy enough, right? You just read the headline, you're like, "Mm-mm, nope, I'm gonna make that 100 times more complicated by, just putting in this narrative that I have really no proof for, but I'm gonna get some pseudo proof for, and all these people are gonna believe it." Oh, yeah, loved that stuff, loved that stuff. It was something, about that just gave me a rush. It gave me
Hmm.
this power dynamic. It made me feel powerful. I had this knowledge, I had this knowing. Forget actually having critical thinking. I was the most critical thinker in the room. You don't know any better. So there was like this pride aspect.
Yep.
And I do think that there's an understanding of, hey, this is factually true. objectively true. It aligns with reality. Here's how. Versus, oh, I have this knowledge of this thing that you have to be in the know to know about, and I know better than you, therefore I can discard what you're saying. I think those are two different perspectives. And so that was the allure. I had like a lust for the supernatural, all the things. Okay, so that's kind of the background there. But becoming a Christian, I mean, you have this overlap of I had this overlap. I became a Christian and I got very annoyed maybe. I'm still like leaky reaching for a word to describe this in a succinct, simple way without over explaining, but I didn't like Christians for the most
Hmm.
part.
Even
Um,
when you were a Christian or
oh
after
yeah,
okay.
they were actually part of the problem.
Oh.
I made a whole video about this,
Mm.
where especially a female part of that. I mean, not to sound like oh poor innocent female, but no, that was part of it. I was just basically looked at like I are you serious? Like, you actually wanna learn the Bible? Why are you asking me this
Mm.
question about hell? You know, just have more faith, you know? And here, there's the kids ministry right over there. Like, why are you here asking me?
Ah.
Yeah, right? It was just like this attitude of, you don't wanna think about your faith, do you? Right? Like, there was this anti-intellectual vein, and it really turned me off. New Thought is the opposite. Not only is it embracing, right? Embracing feminism. It's embracing feminism. It's
Mhm.
very progressive. So I kind of became like this feminist where I was not equal to you, Will. I was not equal to you. No, no, no. I was better than you. I knew better. I'm a female. I have more knowledge than you.
You have the internal heart knowledge that men lack.
Yes. Yeah. And so there was just a lot of pride in the language of humility. And it's me getting my power or whatever. So there's that vein. And historically speaking, there's a strong feminist vein in early New Thought literature. So that's part of it. But the other part of it is, I mean, I guess I was an apologist at the beginning. I always had questions. I was always annoying. I was always wanting to understand and learn more and dig deeper and get into the why of things, and if I didn't understand it, I mean, I was the slow kid in class. I was the slow kid in class. I was in special ed. I'm like, "Teacher, I don't get it. Can you explain this again?" I'm still that way, and I just don't care anymore, I guess. It's, "Explain it to me again." Like, I'm 9. Hold on, back up. What about this? What about that? Oh, I get it now. Okay, 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 okay. Now explain this. That's how I am. Like, it's
Yeah.
just how I learn, and I don't think they had the patience for that. I really don't.
That's not the slow kid. That's the smart kid. Slow kids don't
I was
write
so
books like
close.
this. Okay.
Sometimes I still didn't get it.
Okay, fair.
Damn it. I'm still like that though. Like I was just talking to my friend Elisa. We were just talking about her,
Hmm.
and I was like, I don't get this. There's this new word that she's saying. I'm like, what is this? Can you explain this? I don't get it. Where did this come from? And she's been talking about it for like 2 years, and I still don't get it. Right? And she doesn't care. Like she's like, here, yeah, this is great. Like, give me more. So the fact that there was this aspect of Christianity that I could find on the shelves at Barnes and Noble, even some churches, even some other Christians that seemed to embrace that, right? They dared to think. In fact, they told you that your mind was powerful and that your words were powerful. You could create with your mind. You could create with your words. Oh, and Jesus really taught this. Look, Jesus was like pro power. He was trying to teach you about the Christ within, and that, the law of attraction is real. He's trying to teach you the secrets of the universe. These other Christians over here, they don't get it. They're just closed-minded, bigots. They're probably racist. Like all these things. They were the peasant Christians that didn't quite get it. And not me. I was the smart one. I was the intelligent one. I was the more spiritually attuned Christian. And so
Hmm.
that was kind of the flavor of New Thought. That was the flavor. I'm smarter. I'm wiser. I have more knowledge than you. I have more spiritual wisdom because look at all this that I have access to that I've read, and you're just sticking with the Bible? That's boring. And so all these teachings, I fell it. I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And the leaders that I follow, there were so many. A lot of them are prosperity preachers. Joel
Hmm.
Osteen is one of them. Joel Osteen has links to New Thought, the New Thought movement, the beliefs. And so the things that he would say, and even New Thought proponents, if you read the book, so you know this, even New Thought proponents will watch Joel Osteen and say, yeah, that guy's just waving around a Bible
Yeah.
saying New Thought things. Like he is one of us. and they like what he's saying. So it should tell you that a new thought, somebody who's diehard new thought, knows what new thought even is. Maybe they're in unity, right? Looks at Joel Osteen, right? But then Christians who really understand, maybe church history, the scriptures, look at Joel Osteen and go, no, no,
Mm.
what's this? What are we doing here? Let's back up. That should give us great pause. But I loved him. Oprah, there's Eckhart Tolle. I read The
Mm.
Secret. Oh gosh,
I'm
and there's
so
so many.
sorry.
I know, there were so many. Emmett Fox, he's like an ancient New Thought author. Napoleon Hill, Norman Vincent Peale, and then all the peripheral pop culture teachers that went along with that. It was everywhere. So even if nobody's heard of these people before, these teachings, um, as far as speaking things in existence, your mind has power to create your reality. Positive thinking is a power. It's not just you making your life better. There's a power to it. The divine mind is all around us, and if you have an energy to you, you can actually change your circumstances because of that energy. Like, you're a powerful being. And oh, by the way, look, it's right here in the Bible. Look, Matthew 7:7. You have, Mark 14 and all these other scriptures taken out of context. Yeah, here, look, shoving it in your face, saying this is true Christianity. Okay. So, like, that's how it was given to me. So, all of that to say, to circle back to the beginning of my point here, when I got out of it and I was told, oh, this is new age, right? I'm like, oh, I'm in the new age. And I started talking to ex new agers. They were not into any of that.
Hmm.
Like, they were like, into Reiki. I'm like, what's that? I'd never heard of Reiki before. Um, let's see, what was the other one? Oh, yoga. I had no idea that yoga would have been considered new age. I'm like, really?
Hmm.
What? Yoga's new age?
Yeah.
Ascended masters. There was a whole section of the new age where there was like maybe like interdimensional beings, like mermaids and fairies, and they weren't just mermaids and fairies. They were actually uh spiritual beings in another dimension that you talked to, star seeds. I
Uh,
had no idea. I did dabble a little bit with some of it. Tarot cards, I believed. I believed that people had spiritual gifts. I went to go see a tarot card psychic a few times. I messed around with crystals. So I mean, I dabbled in some of it, but it was always under the understanding that, oh, this is scriptural. So yeah,
mm.
there is a definitive historical difference between the two, and when I realized that, uh, it wasn't even until recently. So if people didn't quite get it, like the average Christian doesn't quite understand, don't feel too bad. I didn't. I was in this movement, and I didn't get it until rather recently. That there's a very big difference between the two.
What's so fun about this is you're talking. It's like we're on two sides of like a glass
Yeah.
wall, like looking at the same thing. Because I had the exact same experience, but my way into the things that you were exploring in New Thought was through the Kabbalah. And so you're talking about
Oh,
all this manifesting and all this different stuff. And that was what I got into. That was my version of secret knowledge. That was my version of the power of the
interesting.
mind. That's what that all is about. And that's a whole other conversation. But I'm so curious I'm kind of wondering, like, if we had both met, I don't know, 15 years ago, I don't know what the timeline for your life was, but say we'll wind it back 10 years, or when we were both deep in it, I
Yeah.
wonder about the conversation we would have had then.
Oh, I would have loved talking to you.
Mm.
I would have been, "Oh my gosh, tell me more," and because, for me, I was more like a pluralist. It was always about what we
Ah,
all had in common, and that, it was very, very just it was squishy. There was no backbone to that. It was,
yeah.
what do we have in common? Love. It was all about love, all about peace, all about finding what we had in common. We all believed in God, just in different ways. So that was God's way of, making sure that we all eventually ended up with Him. So I was a universalist.
Yep.
I believed in that aspect. I would have looked at you like, oh man, he's so spiritual, like he's spiritual like me. It's okay if you don't believe in Jesus the way I believe in Jesus. Tell me what you believe, though. That's
Well, I
interesting that
wasn't
the
even close
Kabbalah.
to a Christian. I wasn't even close to a Christian, though.
Oh, that would have been not an issue for me. I think,
Mm.
I say that, but I would have tried to bring Jesus into the conversation. But what I would have done is make a Jesus that was palatable to you. I would have made
Mm.
a Jesus that's like, oh, no, 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 you don't understand. Remember, the other Christians, they're the enemy. They don't get it. Look, let me tell you, Jesus is way cooler than you think. And I would have sold him to you in a way that would have probably piqued your interest, but would have been incorrect. It would not have been biblical to it would not have been a biblical perspective. It would have been a Jesus is your best friend kind of perspective. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have loved that because I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know anyone who talked about Jesus at all.
Mm.
And so I had no real preconceived notions except for that the Christians were the terrible people who were probably racist, probably
Yes.
that idea, right?
Yeah.
But Jesus, like I knew about Christ consciousness. I didn't really read much about it, but yeah, that sounds okay. Like there's this thing called the Bible that they're trying to shoehorn in. I didn't know if it fit. So that would have been a good conversation from my end. I would have had a lot of questions for you about that Jesus. Like, oh yeah, that fits in really well with what I believe too.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, bullseye. I didn't have a word for this either, but I would have been a very, very progressive Christian too.
Yeah.
Liberally speaking, I would have been pro-choice. I would have been, like I voted for Obama, right? For
Hmm.
no other reason than, "Oh my gosh, he's black." I did.
Yeah.
That's the only.
Same.
Yeah, yeah, right? I would have been very progressive as a Christian though too. I would have looked at, um, I guess biblical Christianity like it was archaic. And I
Hmm.
just had this caricature of my in my mind of remember my first experience with Christians was like, y'all are dumb. That's what I thought. Like,
Yeah.
you guys don't know what you're saying, do you? I
Yeah.
am unimpressed. Unimpressed with your answers. If this is Christianity, like I want more. And I was so hungry. And that's the problem is I was so hungry to know more. Teach me. Give me more of this God. I actually had really good intentions. I wanted to learn. And so that's what got me though, is the only thing that fed me were the people willing to give me some sort of sustenance. So I didn't want to be associated with that. Those are the bad guys. I wanted to be looked at I wanted to give everybody a Jesus that wasn't like that, right? And
Hmm.
so I just kind of pendulumed, there's a whole thing behind that. Actually, I have not a counter question, a question for you. Tell
Hmm.
me briefly about the Kabbalah. I'm actually really interested to know more about that. It's come up a few times, and I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, so the Kabbalah is just as a system is meant to teach you about the architecture of creation. Like this is how God built reality progressively in stages. It's deeply mystical, very esoteric, very, very old. And
Okay.
so this is how God built reality. And you are also God, and you can claim God's power once you understand the architecture of creation to manifest your will as well. And so the training program that I took for the Kabbalah it was a correspondence course through an online mystery school. I would receive 4 printed lessons in the mail every month that I would then study. And the way that you learn the Kabbalah through this mystery school is through studying tarot cards. So not fortune telling tools, they're
Mm.
symbolic pictures so that you can learn the Kabbalah symbolically. And so that was the program. I got 2 years into a 15-year program.
What are the roots of it? It's Jewish, right? Like Jewish mysticism?
There's a Christian Kabbalah as well. I personally think Kabbalah is older than that. I think this school rooted itself in Egypt, in Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice, which is like the guy that all East Western occultism and esotericism came from. I think what might have happened is it hitched a ride out with the Hebrews during the Exodus. That's my speculation.
Interesting. That's interesting to know about. Yeah, that sounds like a mess. That sounds
Yeah.
like theosophy. It sounds like
Yep.
New Age theosophy, some Gnosticism.
Hmm.
So the Kabbalah is pretty old, right? Like it's
It's
going
very
back
old.
into okay,
Yeah, I
very
mean,
interesting.
I would say in the West, Kabbalah, and in the East, Advaita Vedanta Hinduism.
Yeah.
Those are two expressions of the exact same thing, which is Luciferianism,
Oh,
Satanism. That's what I think it is. I don't think it's specifically Jewish in that way.
got it. Yeah, the only other time I've understood the context of it is in a Jewish context.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there are still schools that are teaching it, but to actually study the teachings of the Kabbalah, they're clearly much older and from another source.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a piggyback interview. I'll have you back on my channel.
Would
And
love to.
we'll yeah, because 'cause I'm like, "Man, tell me, teach me." Because there's, like, overlap, but I don't know what that is. And I always love learning about,
You
uh
froze.
yeah,
You're
like,
back.
occultic this is our thing, right? It's like you get sucked up into it, or you've been deceived by it, and all of a sudden there's a lot of these other peripheral occultic beliefs that we want to know about and learn about. I love weird spiritualities.
Yeah.
Kind of like as a history buff though too. I think it just makes us wiser for witnessing for the gospel.
Well, we share something in common, which was a spiritual hunger. And so
Yeah.
you went to this world of new thought out of an expression of spiritual hunger, and you kept asking questions. And so did I. And we had two different paths that now lead here, which is pretty cool. So, but what was it that led you out of new thought? What was the thing that started to crack the shell?
Yeah, this is so funny because the things that God has used to get me out of deception
Hmm.
are just not what you'd think. I didn't have, like, some church revival, right, when I heard the gospel. It was like a drunk dude at a party. It was he just got saved and he was still kind of, backsliding a little bit, but he was there telling the gospel, let me tell you, and I
Incredible.
believed him. And then this time around, it was 2 Jehovah's Witnesses. I actually put them in the acknowledgments of my book because God used them, and I even wrote when they broke up with me. Inevitably, they broke up with me because, of
Of course.
course, I'm not gonna I was like, "I'm not gonna become a J-dub, sorry."
Yeah.
Um, and I knew it was coming to an end. I got her some Gerber daisies, and I wrote her a letter, and I hope she still has it. But I remember saying in that letter, like, "You will never know how much God actually used you." And
Hmm.
that was more for me, but this is what that story is because I had my first daughter. When was she born? 2010. And so this was around 2011. She's getting older. And, when you have kids, you start getting really reflective. And I'm still like this with my girls, just reflecting all the time about what's going in the culture and preparing them. And so, one thing about New Thought to know is that it, it will say that it will teach rather the teachings in general make you think like you have this higher knowledge. But because you're always trying to keep a positive mindset, because you're always trying to be on a high vibration, you don't really have room to think critically because
Hmm.
critical thinking is kind of seen as negative thinking. And so that wall got broken a little bit after I had my daughter because I had it all up in my head. I was going to manifest how I was going to have her. I did everything right. Let's just put it that way. I did everything right. I had the right energy, I had the right thoughts, I spoke the right things, and all of it fell apart. Nothing happened. And I was floored because I'm like you. I remember you mentioning some things worked for you. Like you practiced these things and you saw results, and so did I, and so I expected
Hmm.
this to happen, and it was like a really big wake up call. So that was like the first time that I'm like, okay, maybe I need to think a little bit more about this. So I just kind of leaned a little bit more into that, and then I started thinking, okay, I have more questions. I don't really quite understand this. I've been told this. I've been reading about this, but I still don't quite get the problem. Like for example, with hell, I had such a problem. No matter I wasn't satisfied even as a universalist because then I still had the problem of justice.
Hmm.
I didn't like it's like the opposite, right? I wasn't happy either way. I didn't like the idea of hell because God's just throwing people in hell. I didn't understand. What about people who've never heard of Jesus, and
Hmm.
that face of the Christian who's never actually thought about their faith? Yeah, you know why? It's because God is all love. Of course he's going to accept everybody into heaven. And once people know that God is real, they're going to be overwhelmed by that love and they're going to follow him. Yeah, it's garbage. So
Yeah.
he so I had this problem though because then I played the movie forward and I'm like, well, I have another problem then that's kind of worse than that. And that's if something horrible happens, if somebody does something objectively atrocious, they don't have to pay for it. There's no justice here. Is there no, like, I would see terrible things happening, which you're not supposed to do, by the way. You're supposed to
Mm.
you're only supposed to have positive things in your life. It just got me thinking, okay, like I'm starting to kind of lean a little bit more into it, but I was not sold yet. I was absolutely still very hard in my beliefs. And then 2 Jehovah's Witnesses show up at my door. And I'm like, "Oh, they're going to teach me the Bible. They're going to tell me all these things like what's in here." And I had no idea. I thought if you said you were a Christian, then you are good to go. Right? Like
Mm.
you believe in God. in your own way. We're all good. But that's not the case. Around the fourth visit, I realized um, y'all believe in some weird things. What's happening here? And I started researching. I felt God. I felt this urge to go research this religion. And it was in researching their religion, first I discovered, oh, dang, they're a cult. And by ex Jehovah's Witnesses who have left this religion, and they're telling you about mind control. Like, what is mind control? What is a cult? Right. And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. But something started happening because they're Christians now and they sounded really smart.
Hmm.
And they sounded really smart, but they're telling their story, how they got out of Jehovah's Witnesses, how they got out of the cult, out of the religion, and they're talking about Jesus, and they're talking about the Bible, and they're talking about hell, the Trinity. They're talking about core doctrines that I was very squishy on. And what ended up happening is like, oh man, okay, well, if what they're saying is true, then what I believe may not be true, right? And so that dance started dancing, okay? And I think really that started happening, and so there's more, uh, softening, I guess, going on, like, as time goes on. It's like a clay. Like, it's pretty hard, but then there's water being added to it, and so slowly it's getting softened. And I think what really just wiped the whole thing away, and I'm like, "Okay, oh no, I need to repent," was when I came across an online forum of a Christian kind of arguing with a New Ager, but it wasn't arguing. It was like Charlie Kirk critical thinking. Oh,
Mm.
really? What do you mean by that? Kind of arguing. And I was so compelled because I'd never seen that. Um, this is right around the time I got introduced to like Frank Turek right away. I
Mm.
didn't like him at first though. Because remember, I came from like I thought K-Love was negative. Okay, so if you hear the tone of voice of Frank Turek, you're like, oh, he's mean. Like he could say that a lot nicer. And so it took me a while to even warm up to him.
Yeah.
But it was like the first time I heard or I saw like intellectual debate, I guess. I didn't know that's really what it was at the time, but he wasn't being mean. He wasn't being snarky. He wasn't being dismissive. He was welcoming. This is the feel I got for it. I don't quite understand exactly what it was. I do remember one aspect, of course, but that caught my attention. Okay, so I'm reading the thread, and this is before Facebook. No, this was after Facebook, but this is when online forums were still a thing. And the New Ager was basically saying, like, yeah, this is something that God teaches, that we can all be God. Like this is the secret that's being kept from you, or something like that. He's going on. But what caught my eye was when the Christian was like, ye will be as God. I was like,
Mm.
man, that sounds like a slimy serpent to me. And I'm like, oh, it does. I was like, it does sound like Satan. Oh my word. And it just blew my mind. Blew my mind. Um, that pulled the rug out from me, spiritually speaking, and that was it. My guard was down, and I leaned into it. I'm like, "Okay, okay, I can see it now, the scales are off. Let's dig in more here." Because before I wouldn't go into these, okay, so, like, I wouldn't go into online spaces that were critical of my things. That was too close to home. But if you wanted
Mhm.
to tell me why Mormonism was wrong or Jehovah's Witnesses, yes, let's talk about that. But again, I had a problem, and I was just stifling it. I was hiding it. I wasn't ready, right? I wasn't ready. That was an open door. I'm like, "Okay, I'm ready now. Alright, give me the hard truth. I want the hard truth. Tell me all the things." Oh, no, and I repented, and that was 2011, and I've been leaning in ever since.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love how it was the question of justice, which is kind of the other side of the problem of evil, right? The problem of justice is like, well, how can there be no cosmic justice if we're all God and someone does something really terrible? Is there no punishment for this? Do they just get away with it in the afterlife and you get to be as much God as I am? Like, why should I bother being a good person if we're all just God, right?
Yes!
It grates that once that little sand gets in the oyster, right?
You're exactly right, and I thought, "Okay, well, my beliefs say, well, you ought to be good." Right? There's an oughtness, I suppose, the
Mhm.
philosophical way, if you're gonna be Thomistic about it. That's not the way I would have put it, but there was always this higher good of love. Right? And that's kind of the flavor in which it's given. And it seemed and it sounded loving, but I didn't think about the inconsistencies there. I'm like, okay, well, if that's what it is, we can't actually live that out though. We can't even do that. In other words, it looked good on paper. It looked good on paper. It's like socialism, right? It's
Mhm.
like, oh man, everybody should just be giving to each other. Everybody should just be this, should just be that.
Mhm.
But they don't take into account, and here's where they get it wrong. Because a new thought, the idea is that humans are inherently good, that
Mhm.
we're bent towards goodness. That's the mistake.
Yeah.
That's the mistake. You can't that was a paradigm shift for me. When I mean, I accepted the gospel and I understood it and I believed Jesus. I accepted it or accepted him, I accepted the gospel. And there was such an innocence there because there was no growth, like real growth from that point. It was like a pause button, right? And then from there it was like boom, right? It's like, oh, that's why that's important, that doctrine. That's why God's like this. Like you learn about the attributes of God. And then to make it better, there was this whole other side of Christianity that I'd never known before. Like I'm going to seminary, going to Southern Evangelical Seminary. Oh my word, I I don't get most of my classes and I love it because it's so deep.
Mhm.
I'm like, man, there's a deep, rich intellect in the Christian faith. I'm
Yeah.
like, there you guys are. Where were you like 10 years ago? Okay. And so Frank, right? First tap right on apologetics, and then Sean McDowell and Josh McDowell and Lee Strobel's always been around, but I mean, he's kind of, it was before the internet was a thing, and all of a sudden it was just this whole new world opened for me. I'm like, oh man, this is my jam. People love answering questions. Nobody's turning me away. And there was this element of being looking at your mind and even your doubts, right? Or Elisa deals a lot with progressive Christianity and how people are afraid to doubt. And I'm like, no, test that. Like test what you're believing. Is it true? And that was so weird in the beginning for everybody because they were like afraid to think. And I'm like, no, there's an element of caution when it comes to like overthinking, right? Where your knowledge can puff up. Yeah, but the scripture says to love God with all your heart and mind.
Hmm.
So how are we to obey that without having some essence of critical thinking? And I think it was Lewis. C.S. Lewis said that we ought to study good philosophy because bad philosophy exists. And there was just deep teachings about God and natural law. I'd never known what natural law was, like how you can prove God exists by not quoting a scripture. Like just by using your logic, using your mind, reasoning, but also the human spirit. Like you're bringing in consciousness. You're bringing in all these elements that are inherently Christian, and you reason from that aspect. It was exactly what I needed, and I love it. Still to this day, I really lean into that.
What I love about everything that you're saying is that you're reflecting back thoughts that I've had during my own journey.
Mhm.
Like I can remember saying things like this to myself. Like for me, it was the problem of evil. Like it was child sex trafficking. Like wait,
Ugh, yeah.
if karma is real, you're gonna tell. It was when I learned about that. I was like, are you gonna tell that kid that that's their karma? That they did something in a past life to
Yup.
deserve this? And are you going to tell the Jeffrey Epstein, like, yeah, it was your karma to be this guy? Like, you're going to look those people in the eye and say that? And I couldn't get anyone, like, they would change the subject. They'd say, like, love and light, love and light. It's like, well, don't just go love and light. And I couldn't find anyone. And so going through this, I also had the same beliefs like you. Christianity is anti-intellectual. And then I
Mhm.
discovered Reformed theology, and I've got giant books of it up on the shelf. And the thing is it all hangs together. And like you said, it can withstand internal criticism.
Yes.
New Age and New Thought do not permit internal criticism because there's nowhere to stand to criticize it.
You're exactly right. Spot on. Yeah, there's so much there as well because the idea is that uh, the truth factor,
Mm,
right? Another one of my heroes and mentors is Greg Koukl, and there's an element of thinking about truth that I think we take for granted. Right?
mm,
We're just, oh, of course, objective truth. Why would anybody think there's anything other than objective truth? Yeah, relativism. I mean, that
yeah.
that dude, that guy over there thinks he's a cat. Okay, and our and our
Or he thinks
culture,
he's a
right?
woman.
Yeah, man, thinks he's a woman who's a cat.
Mm,
Maybe, a hobbit too, who knows? But it's like you have this element now of truth being completely distorted and people are flocking to it.
yeah.
And it's spiritual warfare, right? Like we're having this element. If you have a whole group of people that are just flocking to a lie, chances are the father of lies is behind it. And I think that there's wisdom there to understand that if we can understand what's true about reality, we will greatly understand God. It's something is interesting about the karma thing. Did you see, speaking of Greg Koukl, did you see his interview with Diary of a CEO on that YouTube channel or any parts of it?
No.
Oh, it's interesting. You should watch it. He, I think that Greg, I don't know, I'm biased. I think he should have had more time to talk. But there was one dude at the table. What was his name? Dr. K. I'd never heard of him before, but ooh, is he sprightly. He is an extrovert. He would absolutely exhaust me. But he was a Hindu, but he was also spiritual. That was interesting. But he was at the table with Alex O'Connor. Do you know who that is?
Hmm.
So it was Alex O'Connor, Greg, and Dr. K. And
Wow.
yeah, so Dr. K, I love people who are honest about what they believe and they stay consistent in that belief. And he was
Yeah.
talking about karma. And Alex, who is very, very just, he's a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he's on it. He's very aligned intellectually. And so he's asking about this problem of evil that was coming up. It was the topic. And this is my memory. I'm a little fuzzy on that, but I do remember that Dr. K was bringing up karma, the issue of karma, that he has to deal with people who are sick or dying. And he straight up, and I'm paraphrasing, but he straight up backed up what you just said,
Yeah.
that you cannot, okay, you can't help somebody because you'll mess up their karma.
And just go to
Fuck.
India and you'll see that
Yep.
manifesting everywhere. Yeah.
Yes. And that's their answer. Because if you believe that the way that he explained it was probably the best way I've ever heard it, honestly. And I think that that's actually a good lesson to understand what it is they believe and why. I'm like, oh, I get it. I understand why they wouldn't. It's still garbage, but now I get why. You know?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, in another life, you're trying to work off that karma, and this is your payment for your past sins. So if I help you, I'm hurting you
Hmm.
because you then cannot you're gonna have to deal with this in another lifetime because then I went and helped you and messed up your karma and then therefore messed up mine. I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh my, I hate that that makes sense, but I hate that he believes this, like he thinks it's true."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's really interesting. I had a very twisted view of karma where if you didn't believe in Jesus or if you didn't believe in God, then you would just be reincarnated maybe until you did believe him somehow, some way. It was real
Yeah.
squishy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think once I first encountered Christianity, once I was transitioning, I got baptized and I was starting to leave these thoughts behind and really subject them to scrutiny. I think there was a period of time, I can't say for how long, maybe a couple months, where I was like, okay, all these religions are equal paths up the mountain, but only Christianity gets you the rest of the way. I think I probably believed that for a very, very brief moment in time. And then I was like, wait a minute, all these other religions are really, really wrong. That's really, and so, and that was a big moment for me. I'll never forget when that kind of clicked over because I was the guy who literally chased down the world's religions. I've been to 30 countries around the world, India, China. I've been to South America, wanting to understand these world religions. And so I was a universalist like you, all the perennialist, Carl Teichrieb, who
Yeah.
who you
I
mentioned in your
love
book.
him. Yeah.
He has a section in Game of Gods where he talks about perennial man at
Yeah,
the
look.
end.
I got it
Oh,
right
you
here.
got it right there.
Yeah.
Great. There it is.
Holding up my microphone.
So that's a good place to put it,
Yeah.
actually. And so he talks about perennial man towards the end of that book. And I'm reading this in the podcast with him, like, Carl, you're describing basically the guy who was me. And so to set all that aside
Mm.
was a big moment. It did make sense in a damnable sort of way, but it can't produce righteousness. And you travel around the world and you see that. And India is a great example.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you had so much more experience than I did as far as, like, going and actually doing things, right? Like, I read books and I watched people, and you actually went on, like, a trip around the world. But there's like what was it? You were mentioning Carl. Oh, the
Hmm.
perennialism. I'd never even heard of that term, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
And that's even a term that's coming up more and more lately because of people like Richard Rohr, right?
Hmm.
You have perennial wisdom. He's so annoying because he's like the Pope of progressive Christianity,
Yes,
but
he is.
yeah, but he's not. He says he's Catholic, but he's not. Says that he's Christian, but he's not. He's a progressive, but what does that mean? He also has a lot of perennial wisdom. He has this, he has that. He's like pinning down a cloud, and it's just really annoying. Um, and so learning about what that is, like that line of thinking, that line of belief, it's so interesting to see, oh, yeah, I held on to that too, and you didn't realize it. So there's still things that I'm learning about what I used to believe in and what kind of
Mhm.
things I dabbled in because it's not just this bucket or that bucket. Like New Age, for example, a lot of New Age can be, uh, aligned with theosophy, but does
Mhm.
anybody really know what theosophy is?
No, they
Like the
don't.
average Christian probably doesn't.
Yes, exactly. I mean, New Age essentially is theosophy, but
Yeah.
commercialized and commoditized, and then you throw a bunch of psychedelic drugs at it, and congratulations, you have a New Age.
Dude, that's like the formula. That's a mathematical spiritual formula.
But
Theosophy plus New Age, maybe a crystal ball with some psychedelics equals New Age,
mhm,
basically. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
it's very external. That's what the way that Carl put it.
mhm.
Is New Thought is more internal, New Age is more external.
But I think what makes New Thought really interesting is that you have sort of titans of industry like Dale Carnegie and Napoleon
Mm, mm.
Hill, and Wallace Wattles and all. You have these put together professional men that will openly profess these ideas. It's not Tommy with the man bun and the yoga mat. It's a very
Mhm.
different perspective.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that goes into the American thread that I brought up
Yeah.
before, because again, this is a movement, like it started somewhere. And I trace that history. I have a whole chapter on that. And then terms, I define terms. Um, because you have like the spiritual aspects of it, but you also have very, you know, big people that had a lot of influence because that's what New Age or New Thought is that it has more influence than recognition. And you had people
Hmm.
who had big recognition. Napoleon Hill. People still read his book. It's still a bestseller.
Yeah.
Dale Carnegie. People aren't happy about Dale Carnegie being in the New Thought thread, but he is. And those are just two. There's so many more, but those are the two that most people recognize who spearheaded, laid the foundation for the self-help movement. And that's the idea is that part of it was you can do this on your own. You are enough. You don't need God. You are God.
Hmm.
Here's how. And then the thing about Napoleon Hill, for example, I call this the it works trap. Because New Thought as a historical movement is very pragmatic, right?
Hmm.
If it works, well, then it must be good and it must be true. It must be true and it must be good. Those two things are very, and that's actually, I learned this at Southern Evangelical Seminary, by the way, is that that's a theory of truth. There's theories of truth out there. I'm like, what? What is this? Um, we mostly, as Christians, ascribe to what's called the correspondence theory of truth, which
Hmm.
is reality is or truth is what corresponds to reality. That's what truth is. But then you have other people who see truth differently. Truth is from within, your true authentic self, which is a big New Thought word, but that's also in other spiritualities, um, is where you're going to hear truth, your intuition from within. Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was a transcendentalist, he was a New Thought father as well. And that within, that truth within, well, that's where you hear truth, right? And so you have these elements sprinkled into these books that sold to millions. And I have a whole video, by the way, on Napoleon Hill specifically about what a fraud he was and his connections to New Thought, but that's a whole other thing. But he does say some things that are very good. He he says things in his book that I'm like, man, that's great advice. People should do that, right? Okay, it works. It's true. But then you start believing that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what else you got? This is really working for me. In fact, I became rich because of this. What else you got? Well,
Yeah.
here's the divine mind garbage I'm going to feed you now about how, I've had these conversations with these other beings and they gave me wisdom. These were my mastermind. This is my mastermind class. Here's how you do this because this is all part of this divine mind that we're all a part of, and you have
Yeah.
access to it too. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Hill. And so it's like because this worked, we adopt these other things that are pseudo, right? Like a pseudo spirituality that are false. And we do this all the time. It's not just with spirituality. Somebody says that, you know, a healing, a sign, wonder, or miracle. Well, it worked. Wow, they healed me. Wow, I have to devote my life to them now. Thank you, Mr. Costyhen, or no, Benny Hinn. Thank you, Mr. Benny Hinn, for healing me. You must be a true prophet. Therefore, everything you say, I'm going to believe.
Yeah.
That's the it works trap. And so testing is very important. Knowing how to test what you're experiencing in a critical lens is very important. We do it with like face creams, right? Like, hey, this face cream got rid of my wrinkles. What else you got? Well,
Hmm.
here is this body spray that will align your chakras, right? And you're like, oh, yay, give it to me. And so, yeah, it's like this whole thing is kind of packaged together. That is ultimately the simplest way that I could put what New Thought does. This is how we start believing in New Thought ideas. We read a book that we think is secular, or we go to like an AA group, which is so tricky because AA has helped so many people, Alcoholics
Yeah.
Anonymous. But the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that book, I think it was written or inspired by Emmett Fox, which is a New Thought author. I have to go back and check that. I think, yeah, I have to go back and check that. But there's New Thought influence there. Like it's really tricky because what do you do if you've gone to AA and you're like, it healed me, like it helped me.
Yeah.
This was the only thing that helped me overcome my alcoholism. So I think that those are difficult conversations to have. And I think that's one reason why it's difficult to spot and point out.
Yes, and this is showing up. I came from the manosphere. I was in that world for a while, and you see this with a lot of young men as well,
Mm.
who like, oh yeah, this influencer helped get me out of my passivity and get my life on
Yeah,
track.
Andrew
It's
Tate.
just, yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
exactly right. And so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it worked, but how? What is attached? What's the caboose
Yup.
of worldview of beliefs? That is attached to everything that you just said. And guys will say, but he says some good things. Well, yeah, but like, can you separate the good things from the other things? Are you willing to carve out that one little piece of advice, or is there someplace else you can go to get that same piece of advice?
You're exactly right. And then you have to worry about, well, what's good advice and
Yeah.
what's bad advice? Like what's your discernment meter? Because scripture is very clear that we ought to properly judge. And that's all judgment is having good discernment of knowing
Yeah.
right from wrong and truth from false. But that requires first knowing what truth is.
Mhm.
And I'm sure I could listen to Andrew Tate and be like, "Oh, okay, that's good. The rest is garbage." But
Yeah.
why do I know that, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think we practice that with what we do because I don't know about you, but I read a lot of books that I don't agree with,
Mhm.
and you have to know that it would be a cheap shot to say everything in here is terrible, uh, just like it would be a cheap shot to say all of it's good. It's like you have to have this fair lens on.
I appreciate you saying that because one of the parts of my backstory is ayahuasca. Perhaps you've heard of that.
Is that
Um,
a drug?
yeah, it's like
Okay.
the mystical
Native.
vine that you go down to South America and drink. So it's
Oh, yes. I know exactly what that is. Okay.
yes. So I've done 15 ayahuasca ceremonies before I became a Christian, and so I've got a tattoo on my arm that you can kind of see it. That's an ayahuasca vine, and so yeah, I don't know if you can see that.
I
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm getting ready to write it's sort of a research paper, a white paper about it, just helping people helping explain to them from a Christian worldview, like what's actually going on, demystifying it in a way. I've got a shelf full of books just out of frame up there that are all about ayahuasca from within, like pro ayahuasca literature. So I'm preparing to read through all of that so I can accurately reflect their views, not just my
Yeah.
personal experience, but like
Mhm.
what's actually written. And so, yeah, that's good advice to be discerning. Like, yeah, that's actually a good observation about humans or about relationships, but consider the source, you might say.
Yeah, and I think it's very that's what I did for my book. I didn't want
Yeah.
to yeah, I that was probably my favorite part was the research because not only did I it was like I think of apologetics like spiritual journalism, like a Christian journalist. I'm going out, I really wanna know what you believe and why you believe it, but it was boots on the ground research of going into the spaces, unity centers, Unitarian Universalist, religious science, going to any place that I knew that somebody progressive churches, people that believed in these beliefs, um, and asked them questions. "Well, why do you believe that? What is that?" And it was so fun. These people were so nice. I did not have one hostile conversation. Not one. Every one of them was willing to talk.
Hmm.
And I disagreed with them,
Oh,
but I
sure.
mean, yeah, but I think that there's an element of wisdom in getting their perspective. If I'm gonna say, "This is what New Thought is," I had better have source material. I love source material, and all I'm looking on my shelf, all the books that I used, resources, sources that I quoted, footnotes, if you will, in my book that I cited were from New Thought sources, original New
Hmm.
Thought sources, and so there has to and even then I'm still learning. But what's difficult about New Thought is they love moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
And you read my book, so you know about one conversation I had with a reverend, and I'm pretty sure it's in the yeah, man, it's in the progressive
Maddening.
chapter. Oh my. That was half the experience though. They were very kind, but a lot of them were very inconsistent and they could
Yeah,
care less. They
that's right.
don't care. And that drives me nuts. That's what I was saying before. I'm like, Dr. K, thank you. Thank you for having a backbone and at least telling people exactly what you believe, even if it's
Hmm.
hard, because then I can actually wrestle with that. I can think about it. But if you're over here being all squishy, if you
Hmm.
if you're over here being all floofy and
No,
fluffy and
yeah,
just
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of changing the goalposts because I how am I supposed to actually steel man your argument? How can I say that this is something good and ought to be believed if you can't even give me a definition of what you believe and then stick with it?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so I think that's a frustration that makes it difficult for me in this camp. I'm sure you've had the same frustration because I do genuinely want to understand. And I sometimes I get criticized for um maybe not coming out with my gloves off, I guess. I
Hmm.
don't like that. I think people, maybe people that have heard my story, again, they neglect that I know what that looks like, right? And sometimes you need
Mm.
that. But to fall into this legalism ditch, I don't think is any better. I think that there's a way to go about and be very bold and very firm in your beliefs without hardening your heart and without becoming a bully. And part of that is, again, I'm going to say Charlie Kirk. I mean, going out and having
Yeah.
conversations with people eye to eye, because for me personally, one reason why I like that is because it's really hard to forget that somebody's made in the image of God when you're staring at them in the eye and you're having a conversation and you see their children, right? You see that they have a life and they have feelings and yeah, man, tell me your story. What's going on here? Like, why do you believe this? What about that? What about
Hmm.
this? And there is a leaning into that I noticed in these conversations when they're like, oh, you're a Christian. Like, yeah, well, tell me more, right? Like, I wasn't in
Hmm.
there to fight with them. I was in there to challenge them in our conversation, but I was in there with a goal to properly understand them because that's the right thing to do, you know?
Hmm.
So I mean, there's a lot to go off on that, but yeah, I think there's something to be said for source material, respecting the source
Yeah.
material, and then demolishing it like in a biblical way, and then having a good conversation about it.
Yeah, the intention is to win the man, not the argument.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you bring up something I was really curious about,
yeah.
and I'm grateful that you brought up the story of how you chose to approach the book. Because reading it, I was aware that there are lots of different ways that you could have approached the subject. That you could have come at it as a personal narrative, so many
Mhm.
different. But you chose, it seemed to me, to approach it in a very scholarly, a personable scholarly way, rich on sources, history, endnotes, citations, and of course in-person interviews. Like, it was a pretty massive effort to write this book, even though it's not a massive effort to read, which is its own effort. What was behind the decision to approach it that way? Because I can imagine, or maybe you would be able to tell me, are there Christian scholarly books that have been written on this topic? Yeah, I would
No,
imagine not. Yeah.
no, no, there's not, and that was
Yeah.
This was not easy to write this book. This was
Yeah.
the hardest thing I've ever done, because nobody's ever written about it, and that's why
It
people like
shows.
Carl, yeah, Carl, that man is Christianity's best kept secret, I swear. He is a wealth of in
Amen.
yeah, man, like, can we get Carl Tykrib to do a Wes Huff, please? Because he is brilliant. He is one of the smartest people I know.
Yeah.
And he was such a help for me in understanding Swedenborg, New Thought in general, the transcendentalist stuff. Like he's just brilliant. And
Yeah.
so I had my resources and Carl was so readily available because that's what he is. He's like our dad. Like he's always
Yeah.
wanting to help, right? He's always wanting to give. It's what he does. But I mean, even then, he wasn't an expert. Even he was like learning from me, and I'm like, oh, oh, that's humbling, you know. And but that's what we do. We learn. But no, there was nothing written. Marcia Montenegro, she was one of the only other people that knew even about people like Swedenborg, right?
Hmm.
Really smart about it. And so I had limited resources of people who actually knew what they were talking about. And then, and then compiling the information was very difficult because like, imagine walking into a room filled with books, right? Like your living room. All of it's filled with books. I'm not talking about just on the walls. I'm talking about it's piled from top to bottom with books. Your job is to go through them and gather as much information as you can to generalize the overall umbrella topic of all of these books. The books are on one topic. That's how it felt writing this, and I didn't enjoy it. I'll be honest, I did not enjoy that part. It was overwhelming, but I'm saying a lot of stuff, but the reason why here's the reason why. The reason why I approached the book from that topic is because I loved truth. I love facts, and I like putting things in a way where if you're reading it, you had better know this is exactly what they believe. Because I have a responsibility to there's gonna be a lot of people reading this book, watching my videos. There's a responsibility to steward that in a way where I'm not just writing this book to write a book, like a cash grab. That was the last thing on my mind. I didn't I felt like I needed to write this book, because I had been writing it for, like, 16 years,
Mm.
and it needed to be written because nobody's written on it. I have a personal backstory with it. I have personal experience with it, and I was very frustrated when I realized what this was, and it couldn't be a video. You know what I
Mm.
mean? I'm
Hmm.
like, "Oh, yuck, I gotta write a book." And so, there was a responsibility with it to make sure that I am handling this in a way that if somebody were reading it, if a critic were reading it, okay, and they're going across a page and they're like, "That's not what they believe." "Oh, yeah? Well, let's look at this. Let's see." Number 1, there's 3 sources
Yeah.
that are New Thought sources that say, this is what you believe." It's like Mormons, right? You have to, like, convert a Mormon to Mormonism first before you can get anywhere because they're like, "That's not what we believe," but it's like, "Yeah, this is right here. I'm
Yeah.
looking on your website." Like, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like there's a denial there sometimes. Or maybe they don't know, but I better do my homework because I'm gonna look really stupid. We, the church, right? Like I'm representing Christ. I'm representing the gospel and I want to be fair. I want to be thorough. Um, I see it as a responsibility to make sure that what I'm doing is thoroughly researched in order to make sure that truth is being upheld. And so that if criticisms arise on what I wrote, it's because they disagree. Like I remember there was this one guy, oh, I can't remember his name, but he has a whole YouTube channel dedicated to Swedenborg.
Mm.
And he read the little section that I still need to go back and actually watch the video. I watched a little part of it. But he was saying, "Oh no. Swedenborg doesn't deny the Trinity." I'm like, "What do you mean by Trinity?" That's the first thing that
Mm.
comes to my mind because I know what Christians believe. And if you're saying that Swedenborg didn't deny the Trinity, you and I need to define our terms, right?
Yeah.
So that's what the first thing that comes to my mind is that I've done enough research to know, oh, he doesn't understand what we believe for me to say that. And I just think that I don't know, it's a long answer, but I think that you're gonna look really dumb if you make a video or if you write a book and you haven't done your homework and people call you out on it. You better have your receipts. And
Hmm.
I've seen that happen too many times. And I have seen people make videos about topics that they think they know what they're talking about, and they get slammed, and rightfully so, because they didn't do their homework. And so I think it's in that spirit of integrity,
Hmm.
of responsibility, of stewardship that I went as hard as I did, but also made it readable.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate hearing all that. I appreciate that answer. And honestly, like it came across in reading the book because
Thanks.
I've watched your videos and I start reading the book and it's so scholarly but still accessible. Like it's
Yeah.
not dense. It's not like reading a theological tome, but it's very clear. Very early on, the book is going in a hard research historical direction, and like to compare the voice of the book in a way to your videos or the approach of the work, the book has as feels completely solid. Like
Mhm.
there's no room to kind of argue in here because you clearly know your stuff. And I'm reading it like this cannot have been easy to
No.
write.
No.
Like I could feel that, but in a good way in reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I think part of it is my seminary,
Mm.
because they make you dot your I's and cross your T's.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a richly robust seminary in that regard, and there's a lot expected of you when it comes to writing your papers. And so that was that, and but yeah, it was very difficult because if you're writing a chapter, like I have a whole chapter on like the seeker movement, right? Or like the word of faith movement. I have a chapter about that. You have people who you can send it to give you feedback, right? For a critical analysis, which you should do. We should do that. We
Yeah.
should send out our stuff, right? When we write a book and it's like, "Hey, don't be my friend. Don't be
Yeah.
my friend. Read this with a critical eye." Progressive Christianity, that's easy. Send it to Elisa, send it to my friend Jason Jimenez, Dr. Robert Bowman, for my Word of Faith chapter, some of my seminary professors, and the chapter 10 for the church growth movement was the hardest. There is no scholarly research on that. Where do I go with that? And there was a whole thing with that chapter that I had to deal with and make corrections, and it was tough. And the Word of Faith chapter, um I'm still learning about this cuz Dr. Bowman, he would agree with me in some places because I'm trying to draw that line back from, hey, why does the Word of Faith movement sound so much like New Thought? Oh, because there's like historical lines there, right? The question is not, no historian will say that New Thought is not in the Word of Faith movement. The question is, the big question mark is, how did it get there?
Mm.
So I attempt to answer that, and I go back to E.W. Kenyon. But Dr. Bowman, he would probably sharpen my understanding on this, even though the book's out. He would say that it's more through people like John G. Lake. And I think he said Simpson, like I actually interviewed him about this. I'm like, give me some pushback. Right. And I think that should be our posture is
Mhm.
grow me, help me learn. Like yeah, it's really annoying that my book's out and I can add more to it. The things that you're saying, I can actually make it sharper with what you're saying, but teach me, help me learn from you. And I think that should be the posture of it. So that's what's frustrating about it is that no matter it's terrifying writing a book because when you put it out, it's out there forever.
Mhm.
It's not like an internet post where you can do like, oh, let me just edit this. No, like you can't do that. And so there's just a great deal of responsibility that goes along with it.
And I appreciate the commitment to precision. One of the things I try and tell people, like if you're going to come at very substantial movements or individuals or ideas, you have to take one good shot with high precision clean.
Yeah.
It cannot be sloppy because you will create more trouble than it's worth. And the commitment to precision is so difficult. It demands so much to think through precisely, little fine step by fine step. But once it's done, and perhaps you can answer this, how does it feel to have set out what you achieved to do? To achieve what you set out to do?
I don't know how to answer that. Part of it's anticlimactic and part of it is just relief.
Yeah.
Um, because like I said, I think that my intentions for writing the book, need to be very clear because I didn't do this for the wrong reasons. Let's just put it that way. But you know what it is? Okay, my friend Greg, again, over here on the wall, nobody can see this, but I have um 3 little pieces of paper because 'cause I'm a '90s kid, we still use this thing called paper to
Mm.
write notes, and Greg, I asked him for help on my relativism chapter, and oh my, he took that like it was his job. Like, we had conversations, he sent me stuff, like, oh, that was his thing for a while, and he sent me this list of writing advice because Greg is one of the sharpest writers I've ever met, and I printed it out, and then next to that, I have something I wrote about, a quote from William Taft that says, "Write so that you're write so that you wait, hold on. Don't write so that you can be understood. Write so that you can't be misunderstood, or so you can't be misunderstood."
Amen.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
I see it every day. Obviously haven't memorized it yet. And then my friend Holly Pivik, who's also an author, keep it simple, keep it interesting, right? So I have that, but his whole list is right there. So that should give you some background to how much he's written and how much he knows about this because the guy is just a wordsmith. He's really good. But he says this because he doesn't like writing either. And he says, I don't like writing. I like being done writing.
Mm.
And I think that's what it is that, okay, it's done, but then you got to do like marketing, right? You got to go and promote your book, which isn't too hard. That's actually really fun because then you get to talk about it. And I always joke, like I just did a speaking event and I told everybody, it was about New Thought, of course. And I told everybody, I'm like, my publisher probably doesn't like it when I say this. I don't really care, but I don't like talking about my book, but I love talking about the topic, right?
Mm.
And I think it's that feeling of, okay, I've actually been writing this book, not being able to talk about the topic for so long, like over a year, and just kind of seeing how little this is being talked about. Nobody's talking about New Thought. Nobody's written about it. And so to them, they're like, "Oh, this is a great idea," right? To me, I'm like, "I just want to talk about it." So I think there's a relief from being able to just read all the books, make videos about it, do the interviews, but it's also slightly anticlimactic because um I don't know. I think that I'm just glad to be done, but I'm also I think I think that it was within the writing where it's like, "Oh, finally finished this chapter." I would, like, reward myself. I'd go get, like, a pizza and chocolate. You know? That was my, "Oh, okay," right? Those
Mhm.
moments. So I think because I had that interspersed in writing when I was totally done, I think I was more afraid than anything than relieved because I'm like, "Oh, is this gonna land? Is this gonna be okay? Like, are people gonna get it? What's this gonna be like? Did I make a mistake?" Right? And so that's where my mind went because I had that high standard of, of of I guess, the stewardship of what we were talking about before. And here we are, it'll be a year in January, and I'm like, "Okay, yeah." So I think that I'm still kind of working my way up there, to the, "Oh, how does this feel?" It feels great. It does feel good. It feels good talking about it. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever write again.
Have you
It's gotta
had
hit me, you know?
have you had New Thought people or Christians who have been wrapped up in New Thought, maybe unbeknownst to them? Have they come to you and been like, "Wow, thank you for breaking all that down. I had no idea," or "Thank you for illuminating ideas that I was carrying that like I didn't realize were warping my faith."
Many,
Mhm.
many of them. I think that there's a level of respect I have for the Christian who believes in a lot of New Thought beliefs and did what I did, right? Where they just kind of leaned into it. And I always say, if there's somebody out there that's read it, or maybe they're listening to one of these interviews that maybe you're mad at me, maybe you don't like this, maybe this is making you feel very uncomfortable. I just want to reach through the camera and just give you a big hug. I'm
Mm.
not even going to sit here and try to convince you. It's hard. It's hard to have your beliefs challenged. But that's why I think truth should be above all. Truth and courage. If you have courage, you will seek truth. And that means becoming very uncomfortable and looking at maybe another side that challenges your entire worldview. Like my first love in ministry was cults, right? Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. I think it was them. They taught me the price they have to pay to leave that religion is not any small price. They lose everything, everything, their families if they leave the religion. But they did. A lot of them did. And so when we can pivot our beliefs, right? It's not as earth-shattering as leaving a cult. But speaking of cults, I mean, it's easier to keep somebody out of a cult than get them out of a cult, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think, this book is a testament to that, to trying to get Christians to understand what this is, to avoid them going down that path. But I also think it's a little bit easier for people who might have adopted some of these beliefs. There might be pride. Pride might be the biggest issue. Um, maybe it's, flat out disagreement. Well, why? Why do you disagree? Where did I go wrong? Tell me what's going on here. Like where am I wrong at, right? Where do you think you disagree? And a lot of it devolves into this the argument of it's not loving, maybe, right? Like that's too judgmental for me. And it's like, oh man, I've been there. I have
Mhm.
so been there. And I usually find that there's two things that come from that perspective. And the last chapter I wrote was about a reverend who had this same problem. I find that there's fear and pain, sometimes paranoia. Fear, pain, and paranoia are usually sometimes at the core of why you are acting that way. It's not
Mm.
because it's true. That's not truth doing that to you. It's one of these three. Why are you not able to handle the truth about hell, for example? Why is that hard for you? Because God is love. Well, but why? If God is love, you know what I mean? It's like getting them to think. I love handing people back their brains because then they have to actually wrestle with that. And I hope I put a stone in their shoe, but I'm also going to like hold their hand on the way. It's like I'm going to love you through it, but I am not going to sugarcoat this for you. This is what this is. I will love you through it. I will give you a hug. But yeah, this is true, right? There's a boldness there that we need to have. But yeah, that woman at the end, not to give it
Yeah.
away or anything, it was a New Thought Reverend, and she understood what I was saying. Everybody I talked to, by the way, I gave the gospel to. I asked questions in a way that I believe that they would understand. I think that's very wise to do. If you understand how a Jehovah's Witness might hear the gospel differently, then changing the way you're talking is actually wisdom, right? So for a lot of them, I'd ask them many different questions, but one thing I would talk about or ask about is the serpent's lie in Genesis 3, the thing that got me, the thing that really got me. And that's how the conversation got started. But we were going down the gospel path. It was a different conversation from all the others that I had. And it's like she looked at me. It's like she knew. She understood. She understood exactly what I was saying. And I asked her point blank, like, would you believe this? Like, do you believe this? And she just was so honest with me. She's like, I won't believe that.
Yeah.
And it was a adamant, I am digging my heels in. I know it's true, but I won't believe it because that means that I have to give up my power. That means
Yeah.
I have to face the pain that forms my beliefs. And I think that is so hard to get through to. So the only thing I can do is if somebody's reading this book or if, they are somebody that maybe they're a new thought, wherever they are, the challenge I would put forth is that really worth it? Like if we're talking about eternity, are you going to dig your heels in now and risk being with the God who created you? That peace that you are craving, that lie, that happy little lie that you are living in is going to continue to always be a lie and will always fall short. It will always leave you empty. So that's my point though. It's like leaning into that truth and knowing who God truly is. That's where you're going to find your freedom from that core of that paranoia, pain, and fear.
Maybe can you walk the listeners, certainly I have many of my own stories of this. Can you walk the listeners through a moment where you might have encountered that within yourself? Where it's like,
Mm,
"Oh, wow, this is bumping up against pride, this is bumping up against fear, but my
yeah.
commitment to courageous pursuit of truth is calling me through it." Can you walk us through one of those moments, maybe?
Oh, there's a lot of those.
Mhm.
There's a lot of those. I mean, the first one, of course, that comes to mind is the initial story I told you about the J-dubs coming to my door and me just being stubborn, real stubborn. It's like, no, I don't want to. I don't. How can you say something bad about Oprah? She's amazing, And just kind of digging my heels in. And then it was just a process after that of learning that I was wrong a lot. And I think that's where I just have this position of I've been wrong so long, so many times that I just kinda shut up and listen sometimes, unless I know what I'm talking about, right? We stay in our lane. We stay in our lane and you fact check it. You put it in there, but there's been just, oh gosh, lots of little micro moments of that. So many of them. And I got on YouTube maybe 5 years ago, and again, it's fun, but it's also terrifying because again, there's a responsibility for that. People listen to you and they believe you and they trust you. And so if there's a mistake made, it's like, "Oh, I have to make a video apologizing. I got something wrong." Or I made a post about this and I gotta make this right. I gotta do this. That's why I actually interviewed Dr. Bowman. That was terrible.
Hmm.
I mean, it wasn't actually, it's not as terrible as this other incident I'm gonna tell you about, but, it was, I had him read the chapter, he gave me his feedback, I made the changes, and then he read it again, and he's like, "Yeah, you got so many things right. This I would disagree with you on." I'm like, "Oh, okay,
Hmm.
well, let's get you on my channel, and then you can call me out on it, right? To hash this out for the people who've read the book, right?" It wasn't fun to do, but it needed to be done. It's very uncomfortable when people might make an accusation, and everybody's always making an accusation, especially when you're online. So you have to be very mindful. You have to surround yourself with people who feel comfortable telling you that you messed up. You have to, especially if you're online.
Yeah.
I'll name one right now who's so ready to be that person. There's so many of them. I have Elisa, Natasha, but Alan Parr, he a few times has messaged me and he's like, "Sister, you might want to, reconsider this, blah, 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 or whatever it is." And he gives really good reasons, like good points why it's that way. Or, oh, like that actually sounded really prideful or whatever it is. I'm like, oh, I think you're right. My bad. Like, you're right. You know what? Let me go correct that. And it hurts. It
Yeah.
hurts. But the worst one was the chapter 10 situation. Okay, so the chapter 10 about the seeker sensitive movement, the model. A lot of people don't realize that the origin, one of them, is Robert Schuller, who's a New Thought pastor, who basically heralded the New Thought or the seeker sensitive model. And I'm like, why is nobody talking about this? This is like an unbiblical origin, but we also need to
Yeah.
have a very fair conversation about we can't just cheap shot the whole movement, right? There was nuance there that was needed. That was tough because my first draft of that chapter, the book was ready to go, man. It was ready to go. It was everything was ready. But then I got late feedback, short story, late feedback from somebody who's pro seeker. And I respect them deeply, right? And though we would disagree with the harm, right? Like we would disagree with certain elements of it, it was very difficult to go through that process. I'm leaving out a lot right now, but let me just say, whenever you think you're done with your book and all of a sudden your editor is giving you a call at 9 o'clock at night saying, we have a problem.
Mm.
We might need to do this and that and this with this feedback that we've gotten. And by the way, my editor was phenomenal. He was so good. He was exactly what I needed. Um, he was so supportive and so just so good in that. But that was rough because I'm like, what is the right thing to do? I have like 72 hours to figure this out because they need it right away. And so there's an element there of, oh gosh, there's just so many issues, like so many times, but there's an element there of growth in each one of those moments, knowing when to stand firm, when to kind of like take a step back and think, oh, am I in wrong here? I need to figure this out. Instead of just digging your heels in every single time, unless you know for a fact I can back this up, right? And so I think we need to know when we need to bend, when we need to, take correction, and be wise in that.
If your goal is, to promote and truth and to stand on truth, and that
Yeah.
feedback comes in, it rattles you on the foundation, like, I should probably do something about that. Otherwise, you're undermining your own goal.
Yes. And here I am. I mean, dude, I'm into apologetics. I
Yeah.
love hearing from people that disagree with me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I consider every disagreement. This one was different though, because
Yeah.
I'm reading what, he's putting forth and I'm like, oh, okay, I think he has a good point here. Okay, I need to reconsider that. This I'm not budging on. I think he's wrong here. He's kind of projecting. I don't agree, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that might be. But there was deep respect, deep love for each other the whole time. And it was difficult though. That was difficult. And I think growth just hurts. Growth hurts. And
Oh,
so, yeah, and I think that wounds from a friend can be trusted. And I don't think that it was trying anything else, but that was the hardest chapter to even get peer reviewed. So the fact that there was somebody even giving me insight, I kind of saw as God, in his providence, putting somebody in that was going to give me a fresh eyes from a perspective that I hadn't yet gotten. And honestly, it made the chapter a lot better. And I got to expand on it in a 3-hour deep dive on Robert Schuller on my channel. And it was just, in hindsight, definitely the right thing to do. Definitely made that chapter so much stronger. And I think when people read it, they are going to really grab it and hear it and understand it, because I got that feedback.
I agree. As a reader of the book who didn't know much about it going
Oh,
in,
thank
besides
you.
that it was about the new thought, I was wondering as I'm reading this, look like where is this going to land ultimately?
Mm,
Because I know like the climax of the book or the back page of the book is where a lot of really good stuff tends to be or should. And so as I'm reading it and I discover that it starts going towards the seeker sensitive movement, it's like I really like that was the target kind of there at the end. Maybe target's not the right word, but it was building to make that case. And I felt that chapter, and I know very little about the seeker sensitive movement. So I
mm,
don't have a background in evangelicalism. I'm aware of it.
mm.
I can, and I understand the ideas behind it. And certainly I've, experienced the consequences of it as many have. But I felt that chapter landed so clean, and it really needed to, because there, as you point out in the book, there are so many people who are faithful believers who came in as a result of the seeker sensitive movement. Maybe they're in seeker sensitive churches, and you can't paint the entire thing with one brush.
You
Like you
can't.
have to land it clean.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's the thing, is like whenever you're working on a project and you're this close to it,
Yeah.
and when you put it out there and people give you feedback, you're like, "Oh, this did land." Oh, okay. That was actually, it's interesting that you had that experience, that it kind of led up and ended with uh the seeker chapter, because you're right. That was actually unintentional. But I ended purposely on that chapter for a different reason, because it was the one that was not as black and white as the rest. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, okay, if people understand who Norman Vincent Peale is, if they understand what this is, if they understand what that is, they might understand my argument here and why this is an issue, but also why it doesn't mean we have to throw it all out the door. And the nuance was tough. Like my chapter on the self-help movement. There was no real nuance needed for like the progressive chapter, for
Yeah.
example, but self-help, I mean, some of it's good. There are some Christian self-help books, right? Like we don't need to be over here affirmations, right? Like affirmations or like new thought prayers. And but there's people who, it might be semantics. using affirmations to build somebody up or something, but it's not really affirmations. Like it's more like encouragement. And here's the difference. And positive thinking. You can't demonize just thinking positive.
Right.
Um, there are actual good studies, right, about the fact that if you change the way you're thinking, like if a 15-year-old, right, they err on the side of just being this Eeyore with a cloud above their head, right? They're kind of moody. And so if there was a way for her to be like, okay, you're having a negative thought right now and it's going downhill. Let's pull that back, right? Like
Hmm.
what are some ways to do that are practical, that are biblical, aligned with reality, aligned with truth. And yeah, the nuance was definitely needed. So that's interesting that that was your perspective though. And I'm glad for that.
Well, I think the way that it was communicated was, even in the process of reading the book, I was like, okay, it's one thing to talk about New Thought as this movement that's out there in the world that is and should be a target of evangelism. It's another thing entirely to say this is your personal experience coming out of that. Those are a couple different books right there. But at the end, it was like, how is this relevant to Christians today, even who don't share New Thought beliefs that they're aware of or at all? Like, how does this impact the church today, right now, in a big way? And so it landed right there, and it's like, as you'd built up this case very carefully over the preceding chapters, so you'd establish the momentum, you'd establish the credibility, and you'd establish, like, this is the case, and now bang, here we are in the center of evangelicalism in many ways. And it had to land there. It's like, oh, this is a bigger deal than I realized, because it involves so many churches across the country and so many believers. It made it very relevant in a powerful way.
And even then, there was more that I could have said. I think
Yeah.
that my best friend, she read it and she's like, my only complaint is that it's not longer, And I'm like, tell me about it. It's the books in the room story I was telling you before. There's so much more to know. The transcendental movement, this
Yeah.
whole living your truth stuff. I mean, chapter 6 is a identity crisis. I'm like, that's just what's going on now. Wait, just wait. The devil's got something else up his sleeve. Gender's going to be one thing, but you know what I mean? It's like who you are on the inside is truly who you are, all this stuff. I mean, there's just so many things, so many more books I could have bored people with or that I could have quoted. And it's just yeah, there's so much more to it. But I think that this is sufficient for the average layperson to understand what this is, why it is, where it is, how it's affecting them. It's not going anywhere. It has a Gnostic vein to it. What is Gnosticism? It's like it's still here.
Mm.
I want to make it a mainstream word.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like, and you planted the book squarely down in the middle of a wide open field and said,
Yeah.
here, we can build on this.
Yeah, I'm like, "What?" I was shocked, when I'm like, "Why how has nobody talked about this?" But I think that shows the deception to it is that it's kind of hidden. And so I think that, it was right for the picking. I think that if I never if say I said tomorrow, "I'm not doing YouTube anymore. I'm taking a break from ministry indefinitely." I would be satisfied that, this book would be carried by other people much smarter than me, right? That they'll expand on this topic, that, okay, I gave you something that you guys can start with. Pick it apart. I don't care, but just expand on it. That's kind of my hope for it, you know?
Yep. That's what I was saying to my wife as I was reading it. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, this is not the book that I expected this to be, but it's clear that you were trying to do something. I think you succeeded at it. And I really do mean that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll have to have you on my channel though, because I want to hear more about your story and your background and what's going on over here with Will Spencer, because it's very interesting in this conversation. I know that your background is in New Age, but I
Mhm.
didn't know how deep that rabbit hole went, my friends. I mean, look at your tats.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You can
It
tell.
goes pretty deep. It goes pretty
Yeah.
deep. I've got stories, Hindu festivals, Buddhist meditation on mountaintops, ayahuasca. Like, you, I can go there.
You are the epitome of Jesus being the end game. It's like we go and we look around for everything except him, but we always land right on him, right? It's like, oh, okay, I get it now. You're it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to think that I'm the epitome of having to make all the mistakes in the book first before getting the right answer.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I like that. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for your time. And I really just have one more question just
Yeah.
about the book. If this book could accomplish, maybe you've already answered it, but if this book could accomplish one thing, as a result of finishing it, completing it, launching it out there into the world, what would you like to see this book accomplish?
I wanted to give Christians I wanted to give Christians an idea of what this is so they could be more bold and courageous with their faith. But more than anything, I want people to understand the Jesus of Scripture, right? Not the Jesus of J-dubs, not the Jesus that we make up in our heart, not the progressive Jesus. I want them to understand the gospel clearly and understand why the Christian message, the gospel message, is good and true. And that is exactly what they've been looking for. In fact, I dedicated the book. People will understand it as they read, because in New Thought, the idea is that you're already whole. You just have to recognize it. You already have the Christ consciousness within. You just have to recognize it. You are whole. And so there was this lie, even as a Christian, right? I'm like, oh, everybody's whole. They just got to know. No, no, no. There's only one person who can make you whole. Nothing by the blood, right? Only by the blood of Jesus. And I think that is the driving message I want to get through to people, is everything that you've been looking for is in him.
Praise God. You answer the question for me about the dedication as well. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, this has been a beautiful conversation about the origins of the book and the worldview that it encapsulates, and your journey, and so much more. Where would you like to send people to find out more about what you do and find out more about the book?
Yeah, I have a website, my name. If you just put in my name, people will find me. And then my YouTube channel, Melissa Dougherty. Again, just look for my name. Instagram, Facebook. I think I'm an X. I don't really check X a lot, but I post and I kind of dip and dash, right? I
Mm,
post and dash on X because it's a cesspool over there. But yeah, the major platforms you'll find me. Oh,
wonderful.
and then the
Thank you.
book is wherever you buy books, wherever you go. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. And from your lips to God's ears, may the book accomplish your goals.
Thank you. I appreciate it.